The session is titled On Living Together, and it has two presentations. So, may I request Vipasha to begin?
Good morning. I hereby present you Conversations Between Neighbors, a compilation of short stories. Through various incidents narrated to me by my friends, I wish to bring out the effects that physical and spatial factors in an apartment housing have on generating opportunities of conversations between neighbors. First is All Eyes Are on You, a story of the common plot at Harimahadev Apartments, Ahmedabad. It is a normal morning. Just like every day, Mrs. Patel steps out of her front door into her veranda and comes face to face with all the activities of the neighborhood. Right from the front gate, she has eyes on who is coming, who is leaving. She spots her friends on the gossip bench. And just from the expression, she knows what is the topic of conversation. The children are busy playing, and others are busy in their short greetings before leaving for work. The poor common plot, being the only place of activities, is under the eye of all the residents all the time. Somehow, each resident has hence seen the whole neighborhood alive in front of their eyes. The road not taken. Two roads diverged in the complex. I'm sorry I could not travel both. Although both looked quite the same, there was one, straight and short, would take me directly to my block. There was another, quite long and twisted but equally shaded. The voices of children playing and floating gossips calling me towards it. Was that some greens of grass that I spotted there? But do I this with a sigh, saw ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a complex, and I took the shorter one. And that has made all the difference. This brings one to wonder how many residents are visually connected to which common areas. How is the usual path to one's building arranged with respect to outdoor common areas and building entrances? Because somehow it does make a difference. Oh, front door, what else can you be? It isn't morning, and as I open my front door with a tea in my hand, with the morning light streaming down the stairs, just like my neighbor. Well, hello, Mr. Sen. With our lift only stopping at alternate floors, Mr. Sen has to climb the stairs. I can hear the vegetable vendors shouting, coming from the down end. I see a I see Mr. Shah too has come out with his newspaper. There's a different freshness in this morning air. With our front doors open, we had spent the morning in the lobby, sipping tea and talking about politics. What more would I ask for? From side to side, with these almost transparent doors facing each other. My father and uncle are again discussing something called stocks as they sit in the veranda, sipping tea and reading the newspaper. My mother spots Mrs. Patel from the stairs and sends me to go help her. At the end, what are neighbors for? Look at, even my small brother is learning. He just gave his ball to little Ria as she was bored with hers. The boring lobby. Let's start from the bottom. At the third floor, Bunty was invited to play with his school friends who lived there. With front doors open to have an eye on the children, the mothers allowed them to play on the common swing. As Bunty climbed it, he spotted the beautiful bird sitting on the branch. Quite excited to see it from his own floor, Bunty rushed upstairs to the seventh floor. But pushing the stool from the stored waste, he climbed to see. But all poor Bunty could see were tall buildings. Where is the bird? On one hand, it is important to bring in natural light into the lobby, such that it becomes a lively space. But what is the arrangement of the front doors with respect to the lobby? Can it be designed as an extension of the living space? Each floor is different. Should it have the same lobby design? Balcony. Are you closed or open? As the clock strikes five, sorry, with its whole curve open, little Raj can look out and see the neighbor auntie watering her plants. The floor wala uncle sees him and is calling out to him. See, even the upper floor uncle. Like the uncle, even he wants to hang his hands outside, but he feels safer inside. He wonders, what does he actually want? Quarantine dance session. As the clock strikes 5 again, just like everybody, Harith hears the sounds of Bhaiya Bhaiya calling him outside into his balcony. And there she stands, the cute little bundle of joy, standing on the window, calling him. Just with few words and smiles and waves of hands, he is now her best friend. One can say dance partner. And within minutes, their daily dance session starts again. This makes one wonder, how much visual connectivity is there between two blocks? Distance between the two balconies? How many layers does the window have? Even a simple decision like does the balcony have a railing or a parapet matter? Parallel lines that seldom meet. The proud residents of Capital Greens live in a luxury life. They have private lives that they value the most. Like every day, Mr. Shah leaves his house door number 1 and directly goes to the ground floor. Will the main door ever open? How? Sorry. He decides to go to the ground floor, which lets him have a chance meeting with his neighbors from the 10th floor in the foyer. But some unfortunate residents also leave directly to the basement. Will these parallel lines ever meet? The intercom dilemma. The Capital Greens brochure says we have a game zone, gym, yoga hall, steam room, sauna, swimming pool, basketball court, clubhouse, and also the intercom. So you have so many places to meet your neighbors, right? They call each other directly to meet up, every time a different place for a different activity. But somehow they never realize that when did their encounters become so planned? Where did the chance encounters go? Contrasting to this is the welcoming foyer. As I enter the complex, I can see the children playing, aunties gossiping, two mothers waiting for their children bus to arrive. I can see the small guy who is jumping from the circular window between the cycle park and the foyer. As I look up, I can see my auntie sitting with her neighbors on the stairs, looking down at these activities. My uncle is waving at me. Even as a visitor, when I come for the third time in a year, I can already recognize the faces of this neighborhood. All this made me wonder, what are the factors that create these opportunities of interactions between neighbors? Yes, there are personal factors like household income, length of ownership, number of family members, the age of the family members. But there are also many physical and spatial factors that affect these. But the pressing question always remains, where do we draw the line between privacy and socializing? Why do we think social interactions are important in a neighborhood? It creates a sense of community, helps dealing with society issues, dealing with health issues, food, business talks help in personal business, and even at the end, in a way, it improves the quality of life. Then why not? Why are apartment units being designed to restrict life in the four walls of the unit? What are the spaces can the neighbor enter or look into? Is it the living room, the dining room, kitchen maybe, or even the bedroom? Are people willing to share some space, storage with the neighbor maybe, even a common study, library, music room, common play area between two units? When and where do we draw the line of privacy? It is observed in a lower income group housing, sharing becomes a necessity. Units are more closer, look into each other, and inevitably a stronger sense of community is generated. But with more spaces looking out into the open, more security on front doors, technologies like private lift, intercoms, somehow residents are becoming more and more disconnected to each other as we move to higher income group housing. Why is it such that as we move higher in the income group, the need for privacy starts overweighing the need for opportunities of conversation with neighbors? How can we as architects provide more opportunities of conversations, a choice to the users that encourages more social relations?
Thank you, Vipasha. Shall we move on to the next presentation, Komal?
Yes, I will share my screen. So, hello everyone, I am Komal and I'm from Patton, and I'm going to present my seminar on stories of windows, but the windows are in Ahmedabad. So, how does that happen? This is me sitting on my desk with my laptop in Patan, and I have a lot of friends in Ahmedabad, and they have contributed their stories and their observations towards the windows in their respective apartments for this seminar. So I'm really thankful to all the people who have kind of connected me and helped me to move forward. So the first question that pops out is why window? Like there are stories around all the spaces of a house, but window is the only element that kind of connects you to the outside in an apartment, and everyone goes to the window to look out. And in a way, windows are not just functional element that would bring light and ventilation, but it also creates a certain experience for the room or space it is designed in. So I was trying to look at not what is already existing, and how this existing windows are changed by the users, and what are the real experiences without them. How do the immediate people to the window experience their own window? So I have um, so it is a window that brings in the view into the space, but it is not just the view, but also the lives of other people that one can look into. The This is a living room window which is looking into another living room. The people of this residence are pretty much aware of the life of the person living next door. The sneak peek also does not limit to just the visuals, but also to the sounds that come in. This is a bedroom window which looks into the chokri of the neighborhood. So the person can hear all the sounds of the utensils and also the people talking. Not only just the lives, but they can also be a part of the activities that they perform. Like this is a bedroom window which is wide enough and it looks into another building, which makes the person look into the drawing room of the next building, and they can pretty much see the TV and the show that is going on in the TV. It is not just the physical like the building that is designed, but also the natural elements that come by in the near the window that affects the experience of the window. For example, this is a small bedroom window which looks into the chokri of the neighbor, where the conversations actually happen, but there is a choice between conversing and looking out to the um, experience of the trees and what is happening in the trees. This is a similar bedroom balcony which looks into a drawing room. With sneak peeks also comes this peculiar experience of people about the fear of falling down out of the window. So they come up with a lot of elements there to protect themselves from falling out or to protect themselves from the birds coming inside the building. The security grill here forms a kind of barred window which kind of hinders the view outside, and it also provides certain protection towards the fear of thieves coming into the apartments. In a way, this security grills, when looked with the arrangement or the layout of the room, like this security grill here, which is nearby a bed, also forms a back support to the person and also something to lean on and look outside. Whereas this one, which forms the front facade of the building, which is a balcony cage, um, often makes us think that whether it is really necessary to have a security grill in the first place. There are certain alternatives that are also observed, like this adjustable security grill, which could be used whenever there are fear of thieves or the monkeys coming in to the chakri. with a lot of renovations coming in, this house decided that they do not need a whole security grill and are made aware that the grill could be half the way and which would be adequate for the um, protection from falling down. Similar things are observed in newer apartments. The security grill often reduces and becomes some kind of parental control for kids so that they do not fall out while playing around them. But windows are not just looked at accidental murderers, but they are also a companion to a lot of people. For example, this bed placed near the window forms a lookout space and a morning and evening morning and evening lookout spot. A window near the living room makes one aware about looking out and looking at the drama happening near the other spaces. Windows have also found a lot of working spaces and working desks near them. Of and like someone sitting here could look outside into other apartments or into an open space, and there is this relationship that comes up with the sill of the window and the desk, the surface of the desk. It is also what the person look outside affects the layout of the room. Like here, they are looking at the open terrace and the open ground, which makes them place their workspace near the window. Often, this is an example of a balcony which is converted to window. The balcony wasn't adequate enough to house have two people sitting or enjoying the balcony. So the residents altered the balcony to a window and placed a jhula to uh, m- uh, to create more life around the unused space. So windows do not only exist just to look out, but they can also be designed to look inside the apartment. For example, the residents in this house made a choice to break the wall of the room and create a window in which they would accommodate a storage and a platform to put all the dining dining stuff. The other house made, on the contrary, a smaller window with louvers so as to just peek into the staircase from the bedroom. Whereas in the other apartment, someone sitting in the living room made a conscious decision to make the windows such that they could look at the door and find out who is coming inside the house. The windows, so sometimes like often designed in a unit, get replicated while replicating the units, and with that the behavior of the window changes for each space. For example, this window looking into the other window does not get used because of the privacy issues. This window looks into the living area of another person, and it also creates this sneak peek spot for the for the people living in this house. With the change in the direction of the windows, the light coming in and the wind also changes. For example, this is the window of a living room which looks into another living room, but the other residents do not open it because the sun direction changes and they experience a lot of heat inside the room because of the open window. The other example could also be to increase the interaction between two units. For example, here, this is a dining kitchen window where the study desk is um, introduced, but the neighbors talk to each other from this window and exchange conversations. The open dining window often looks into the other window and brings in more conversation. Similarly, like here in the balcony space, the neighbor has put a jhula, and they have their leisure time in this particular balcony. With all this repetition taking place, a lot of times window end up being closed. So these are the stories of some forgotten closed windows. This is a window with a provision of window AC. So the designer decided to put a fixed frozen glass instead of shutters. And since the residents grew old and they decided to put in the advanced technology of a split AC, this window remained shut forever. Similarly, window AC taking the role of actually bringing in breeze, created this window and made it something like a wall instead of something to look out. Often, not including certain provisions bring out the fact that the windows are the ones that suffer. So here, the kitchen did not provide a provision for the fridge, and so the residents decided that they'll put the fridge in front of the window. This is another apartment with a different window opening up into the vent, which also provides ventilation, but not a view to open up. So the residents only open it up when they need ventilation. Similarly, the size of the window also affects in certain manner. Like this bedroom window is too large for any person to be inside and look out, because the other person could look inside. So what happens? The room, when it's not occupied, uses the window. When the people come inside, they close the window for privacy. And in the end, with more provisions not provided, the balconies that come up in the apartments change into this part-time cloth hanging balconies, where the railing becomes a cloth line, or the cloth line becomes an element in the balcony. And this comes up because the Chokri does not provide cloth hanging space for Indian clothes. And oftentimes residents, they take in the balcony, they put the cloth line inside the balcony such that it is disguised and it is undercover, or they just simply bring the balcony inside the house and convert it into a storage. So what I started off was with the idea of looking out and what can a person look at from the window, and how does that experience changes the space. So even looking at a tree or an open space from a smaller room can change the idea that the room is small. It will start feeling a little bigger, or looking into a bigger open green space, or the skyline, or the ability to see beyond often changes the perception of how we look at the spaces inside. Or not just the area, but the very immediate, like the street or the grocer's shop, or even the parking lot to see who is coming, or the window to the tree and the life inside a tree. So I wanted to bring out this one case in which the designer consciously took up the uh, idea of retaining all the trees in the site. So now the trees are can come to the sixth floor, and the residents could enjoy the life on the trees. But in the similar case, the next building decided to do something opposite. They just uh, took out all the trees and planted new trees. But that does not provide the same experience as what the window could look outside. The window can also look to the street and the drama within the elevation, like the number of elevation visible to a person. And to the sunsets and uh, what can be seen uh, to the far and into the evening sky. But the question remains that if the window is fixed and it's looking outside into something that is open, how long that open space will remain open? Because with time, it will come with new construction and new views, which are out of control. So that leaves me with the question that what is the relationship of window and time and its immediate outside, and how can one design what one looks outside, and how can the life by the window seal be more designed and more considered into designing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Komal. Well, this session is in a way very different from, or is looking at housing from a very different perspective. And uh, what I really found fascinating was getting this sneak peek into so many people's houses, uh, uh, especially in Komal's presentation because it had so many photographs, but also in Vipasha's description of how people live and where they go. And on a, I want to park one question which we can deal with later, but it really got me thinking as to how do we define architecture, or what is architecture, and what do we look for when we are talking of architecture? Because I mean, none of these photographs would make it to an Instagram page or a Art Daily page, right? Because they are not photogenic enough. Uh, but this is how people live. These are lived lives of people in houses, and therefore is reality. And I think what both the presentations have brought out is that some otherwise seemingly trivial decisions in architecture which come at a much later stage. For example, what should the size of the window be? What should it look into? I think what it should look into never comes into the discussion at all. But also what Vipasha was talking about, the path from the front gate to the house, or the way the lifts are placed, where this I think you mentioned that in one of the housing, the lift stops at every alternate floor. Was it? Which one was that? I'm just curious.
That's Ratnanav apartment. So not exactly alternate floors. It has split
uh,
level. So it only
okay,
stops on one level and not on the landing level.
right. So the other people have to go up half a staircase or go down. Yeah. Versus the other extreme where it's a private lift which can take you all the way down to the basement. So it's like, so this whole discussion of what is a lift and what does it do to the experience of people, because you go in into a rabbit hole or a black hole and then you emerge in some other part of uh, in some other world, right? And I think what the lift throws you out into, whether you are opening out onto the ground floor foyer, which is bright and airy, or you, or it comes down to the basement and it's dark and dingy, or it suddenly in lot of cases I've seen that you come out onto the lift lobby on your floor and it is like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, hot summer May month, and then you go down to the basement and all the tube lights are on. So suddenly you are in this sort of from peak hot summer natural daylight where you're trying to shield your eyes. You enter into a space where you need to keep artificial lights on. Uh, the other way is also, I mean, some people have lobbies which have no natural light, right? So the lobby then becomes a dark and dingy space. But anyway, so I think it's interesting to discuss these seemingly small design decisions and the impact it has on people's lives, and how do we bring this into mainstream discussion of architecture. Yeah. I think that, to me, that is a very sort of pertinent question that this session throws up. So yeah, so if anyone has any questions, maybe they could type it out. So also I would like to, I mean, while all of you are framing your questions or warming up, um, uh, taking each of the presentations, I'll take the second one first, Komal's windows. I mean, each of these were very fascinating. One was the whole security grill thing, and there I could see that in couple of houses they had put up an entire net, most probably for pigeons, right? Was it?
Yes,
There
yes,
were a
for
couple of
pigeons.
houses. Hmm. Uh,
And like some
and
of them like put the security grill as well as the pigeon net, like
hmm.
double.
Yeah. So two things. I mean, I when you showed those that photograph, and I think both of you showed the same house. I think it was
Yes,
Tarjani's house. Uh, we got a very good peek into her house, all the rooms and all the windows. Uh, but two very interesting questions came up. One is that, I mean, on one hand, one understands the pigeon menace. I mean, pigeons are no one wants pigeons in their house. And therefore you need to do something about it, and the net is the easiest solution. But in fact, that made me think about this larger question of this whole idea of a low maintenance house, or that anything that is low maintenance uh, by its very nature is better than something that is high maintenance. So uh, uh, I could let the pigeon come into the terrace, but then I'll have to uh, clean the pigeon shit maybe every day, right? I mean, that's the downside of it. And so the net seems to be a very good, a very effective solution. But I think, like both presentations pointed out, it does lead to other issues. And this whole, I think there was that one sketch where it was talking of a cage, right? So I don't know what that net is doing. Is it uh, caging the pigeons, not allowing the pigeons in, or it is caging the human beings inside the house? And it's a it's a very interesting dilemma to have. And the way I look at it, a lot of it is tied with this notion that anything which reduces your maintenance effort that you need to put in on a daily basis is a better solution. And that then leads to its own line of thinking. Uh, so would anyone like to add on to that or talk about it in more detail? Or
I just want to share something, if I can.
yeah, sure.
Okay. So we don't live in a multi-story apartment, but during this COVID and before that, so I would like to share two experiences. The before the COVID, we have a niece, 3-year-old, and she's hyper, very active. So she tried to take a stool and try to lift herself from the window side, and we never had a grill. We never had a concept of grill in our house. Never. And first time everyone got alerted and we got a new window. And somehow the welder, it was like, let's have this window like 1 feet deep from the house. And somehow we made sure that kids able to sit on it and they play. So now kids have a totally different perspective. They literally, they see that पूरे street में कौन आ रहा है, कौन जा रहा है. They keep an eye on everyone. So they also play down, but in afternoon they just go to that box window, and this is very common in Mumbai. When you go to the Dharavi or all these areas, that box windows are popping out, and it's become some kind of uh, cloth line for them. In afternoon, they dry clothes and they put all the stuffs outside. And most of the time, we see kids' toys they are hanging or bicycles they are hanging from the boxes. So that was quite a different experience. But regarding this pigeon, I don't know, we don't have this issue. We only have a G+2. And we never had this pigeon issue. And we never required this grill or a jali. But this time during the COVID, I don't know, there were two sunbirds. They came to our balcony and they were looking for so somehow we had a toy hanging from the ceiling and in a past. So there were remains of that toys. This sunbird found it interesting and they started making a nest on it. So entire this lockdown, entire family was like curious, okay, what is going to happen? And every day, my niece, nephews, and even my mother, okay, aaj kya ho raha hai? So they took almost 2 weeks to build that nest. And then we had an entire story how this bird lives and how they fly away. So we didn't able to go out, but from our window, we were just looking for that nest and this entire process of making babies.
No, this sunbird thing is very interesting, and so it happened in our balcony about, I think, no, before the kids were born. So must be around 10 years ago. Uh, uh, the interesting thing is once they start making a nest, they find that it is a safe place, and so then they start returning a year later or 2 years
Yes.
later, which is very interesting.
So we
And
are still
but
keeping it.
yes. True. No, so I mean that's the. I think it ties to this question of so yes, maybe there will be some extra, some adjustment that one has to do. At least when we had the sunbird nest in our veranda, especially when they were building the nest and when they had laid the eggs, they were very watchful. So every time we would open the balcony door, they would run away. So
Yes.
then we had to sort of change our schedule in order to make sure that they don't get scared. And now it was the kitchen chokdi wala balcony, which had all the drying clothes and the kitchen chokdi. So for a good period of 6 months, we had to use the kitchen sink as the kitchen chokdi, and we had to dry our clothes in the other balcony, which was the bedroom balcony. Uh, so on one hand, I mean, we had to adjust, or it was, someone could call it painful because it required us to change the way we live. But so I always wonder this entire question of low maintenance, that I don't want, if I can spend less time on something, I should spend less time on something because I'm saving time and energy. And I always wonder that eventually for what are you saving all that time and energy to do what? And if that what is not worthwhile, so in this case of Sunbird, isn't it? I mean, isn't that why you're saving all the time in your life so that you can probably watch a sunbird build a nest in your balcony? Uh, but yeah, I think that is a very fascinating aspect.
But the interesting part with my family, where they are not too much into the birds, and they never knew, means they had no idea that what is the name of this bird. So after getting this bird and they Google it up, even my mother Google it up. She's almost 65, and she was like, let's see then which bird it is. And all this curiosity into kids and family and protecting that bird for a long time. And she was like, hey, agar ye bird, so the baby was popping out from the small hole. And she was like, hey, usko billi kha jayegi. Let's protect her. And she was trying to cover all the windows and everything that we need to make sure that baby is safe. And she was very strict with all the kids. And we came to know that babies, they just couple of seconds to fly away. They doesn't need any transition. They doesn't jump here and there. They literally on the first day they came out of the hole and they flew away. And my mother was like, that's it, it's done. And the baby never came back. And she literally went out to see कि उसको कुछ हो ना जाए. So it's not about Sunbird, but this entire incident in a life that you was never attached with the birds, and suddenly you came to know that there is some sensitivity outside that we need to protect, or we are still associated with them. And I think that time was that because of the COVID. Otherwise, in a busy schedule, may not be aware about, or you may not sacrifice it.
Right. Uh, Indu had a question or comment on the chat about the main door and there always being an additional grill door to the main door to let in light and air. Uh, and that such things are not seen in Kerala apartments. Yeah, I think that's very fascinating. And in fact, uh, not in this presentation, but I think we were discussing that what kind of houses, I mean, you're right, a lot of houses have this wooden door and a grill door as the main door. A lot of apartments, they keep the wooden door open and the grill door closed during daytime. But that is more common when, like you're saying, you get some ventilation through that common lift lobby or staircase lobby, because that staircase lobby itself opens out into the open. And if you see, because of the peculiarity of apartment layouts, the living room is probably the room which has the least window area for square footage. So if I were to make a calculation of window area divided by floor area of every room, you will notice that except for toilet, the living room has the least window area for floor area, because it is closer to the main entrance. It is furthest away from the external facade, or rather only one surface opens out. And so even in earlier apartments, you will see lot of bedrooms having cross ventilation in Ahmedabad, uh, but very few living rooms having cross ventilation. And there, I think this whole contraption works very well. And from a socializing perspective, also it works well. Not to say that everyone enjoys doing it, but I think that correlation between the front uh, metal grill door and the well lit uh, common lobby is very important. But I suppose in some newer apartments like what Vipasha was showing, the one with the private lift, all these things go for a toss. In fact, I found that apartment quite intriguing. In the sense that I think now we do see many higher end apartments advertising this whole private lift thing, that you come out of the lift and that lift is only for you. First of all, it's not only for you, it is for all the 14 floors, uh, 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 the floors above you and below you. But somehow uh, uh, it seems more important that you don't share the lift with your neighbor on the same floor, but it's okay to share the lift with someone who is living a floor below you or above you. So this sort of weird notion of what is privacy, that you need privacy from the same floor, but it's okay to not have privacy from the floor, people of the floor above or below. But I'm very curious about how the people feel. So Vipasha, were you able to, did you did you ever have a conversation with them about how they look at this privately?
So I talked to them, and one interesting thing that I also found was that he bluntly said to me that if I get a chance, I would select the private lift over a common lift, because I do feel that it's more secure or things like that. And when I asked him about you are already sharing it with some other lower floor or the upper floor, he said that there are very less chances of that happening, so they still feel that it's a private lift for them, and over a common lift they would prefer it if got a chance. And that's why that question also came to my mind, that suddenly the whole privacy factor is being more overweighed, where
Hmm.
it's not changing your lifestyle much, but still it's something that you feel proud to have, or it becomes a status, and such a way, in a way, actually.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that that is also a very important question. That this whole notion that once you can afford it, that we always prefer something that is exclusive rather than inclusive, whether it's our own private car or whether it's a separate cabin in a railway first class compartment or a first class seat in a plane, or whether it's a lift, uh, or whether it is your own private. I mean, if I go back in history, there were common washing facilities, right? In fact, in a lot of places in Europe and US, you still have a common laundry area for many apartments. But the idea is that those are for people who cannot afford to have their own personal vehicle or washing machine or whatever that might be. If you cannot afford it, then you go for a shared one. So this whole notion that sharing is only if you cannot afford exclusivity is seems to be heavily ingrained in society, and I don't know where that leaves us when we are designing housing, right? And when we are talking of this idea of the collective, of the shared thing.
So even like I realized while doing these interviews, especially talking about that private lift wala apartment, it's not that they don't like conversing with their neighbors and not sharing things with their neighbors. They have one common servant room. They have a servant room, and he said that actually they don't have a servant right now, so they actually are sharing it with their neighbor as a storage room, where both of them are keeping their things. So there is not that a hesitation there, but then still using the private lift is more comfortable in a way, somehow. So that is still something that I don't know what goes in our minds.
Mm. Yes, I think Vipasha, Sanjana has a question that she has asked in the chat.
I also thought that there is actually a potential for that space. Right now, the area just outside the private lift is usually just a very narrow passage with people used to put their shoes and things like that. But there is also one area where the main lift, a bigger lift for the servants and the outsiders is there, and the staircase is there. We're just outside the main front door, which is not usually open. That area has a potential to be developed in such a way that I thought people living in both the houses are encouraged to open their main door and go out into that space and maybe spend some time or something or share it with their neighbors on the same floor, which is not happening right now because the private lift area is placed in such a manner with two doors in that only the door which connects it to the house is used, but the door that connects it to the main lobby is never opened or used until and unless a outsider comes.
Okay.
About this private lift, people are happy to choose that. I think it. I observed that in our context, having a bungalow or a private house on a plot is I think more of a desirable thing, and then we look at the journey of a bungalow or a private koti or something like that, from the ground to the top floor. What happens is you are alone, and it gives you a sense that from top to bottom it's all yours. The whole journey from the ground to wherever you're going. So I think in high rise, when people are already are in a state of compromise somehow, they cannot afford a plot, and then they are shifting. At least I think that is what is happening here. So a private lift might replace that private journey. So one point of time they are outside the house on the road, and everything in the middle which reminds them of that they're living in a high rise get skipped, and then you are in your space. So I think that is a kind of a replacement for that feeling. But
Yeah, that's
I don't
yeah.
support that.
No, but I think that's a very interesting point you make, and not only about the idea that the vertical journey is private in a bungalow and happens inside the house, but also that the journey from opening your car door to the front door of your house is also a private journey in a bungalow. So, because you park the car inside your compound, and therefore, one of the aspects of bungalow life is that uh, uh, you from your house you enter into your car, which is also your private domain. You go all the way up to office or the mall or wherever it is. So your private domain in that sense is spreading its tentacles up to the parking of your office or the parking of the mall. Uh, and there is a seamless private exclusive zone that you are creating in the city. Um, and the private lift probably allows you that same sort of experience, that you get into your private lift, you go to the basement, get into your private car and go out. Whereas this whole other common lobby business is something which is where you have to share your lobby with someone. You open the door and you might look at your neighbor. Seems to somehow uh, uh, disrupt that journey. Uh, and yeah, that is, yeah, maybe you don't subscribe to it, but what do we do if people desire that? And I think that's a difficult question, right?
I think funnily what also happens, at least I think we all do this sometimes, especially the people who live in apartments. We try to go into lifts which are empty rather than full, because we just, I don't know, I at least it happens
Yeah.
quite a bit, right? That going into a lift with a lot of people just makes you very, very nervous. And you might not want to interact with so many people at that point. So I think increasingly we have the tendency to either quickly close the door or just try to go at a time where people might not be there, or because it always leads to very awkward encounters for some people, I guess. But I think it's at least increasing with my apartment complex. It is a very common phenomenon. We all try to like turn the other way. There are lift etiquettes that you should follow, and I think so. It also becomes somewhere like um, a mechanism to get away from this awkwardness. And of course, it's aspirational uh, to
Mm.
have a private lift.
Yeah, actually, it's very fascinating, no, that some people they don't want to travel in a lift with other people, and therefore, like you're saying, they would go in and then immediately close the door, and even if they know that maybe someone might be coming, uh, or if it's the other way around, if you're following someone and someone already goes into the lift, you will sort of suddenly stop on your tracks or dilly dally here and there, waiting for that person to go up before you call the next lift. A lot of people don't mind waiting that extra 5 minutes for that lift to go up and come back down, so that they can go alone. So, in a way, uh, which is, I think, I mean, since we are talking about it, which is to me a very interesting difference between a staircase and a lift. So, although people say that staircases are much more community friendly as compared to lift, I personally think it's the other way around. The only difference is that the lift forces you very close to the someone else who is in the lift. So the lift doesn't give you choice of proximity. That if you share the lift with someone, it's like people are talking about it. It's very awkward. You don't know whether to say hi, hello, or not. So nowadays, a lot of people will start fiddling with their phones so that they appear busy and they don't have to strike a conversation. Of course, there are people who would want to talk in the lift as well. Uh, but the lift, because it's a closed environment, it forces you. And there, I mean, a short note, I also think there's a huge difference between a closed lift, a lift where you can't look out into the open, versus these glass lifts where at least you can pretend to be looking somewhere. In the lift, you don't know where to look, because wherever you look, there's another human being standing next to you, right? So a lot of people then are looking up, because that's, or looking down, because those are the only two possibilities. What a staircase does is that, I mean, if someone is walking down the staircase and you also happen to be walking down, you can gradually slow your pace to, if you don't want to talk to that other person, so that the distance increases, or you will increase your pace to meet up with that person if you want to talk to that. So what a staircase does is that if you end up bumping into someone in a staircase, you have the option of, not bumping or bumping, just like you have before you enter a lift. At the same time, if you, in a staircase, if you meet someone in the opposite direction, someone is coming up and you're going down, which doesn't happen in a lift, you still, there, yes, you are forced to acknowledge that person's presence by saying hi, hello, but then it's momentary, and then that person starts walking up and you start walking down, so it's a split. Maybe it's 5 seconds, 10 seconds. The problem with the lift is that it's like, actually maybe it's just 1 minute or 2 minutes, but it seems like a lifetime that you're trapped, right? And yeah, I think we are not even, as architects, we are not even discussing if at all we have to design a lift which will not force you to have awkward conversations or silences with others, how do we go about it? Uh, the maybe that's why to some extent the private lift works. Yeah, but I think it completely, I mean, because the reading is not finely nuanced of what is the problem with a lift as far as collective or shared and talking goes. The I think the response is also equally brutal, that you just have a private lift so that you don't meet anyone. But again, in that complex, what was interesting was that people go down to the basement or foyer and there they meet people. They accidentally might bump into someone else there, right? So
Even the sometimes the cultural issue, I don't know. Sometimes it's written that lift can take 4 to 5 people or 6 people, but there is no way
yeah,
that 6 people can stand in that area. So many times
yeah,
I've seen people that if there is a single woman inside or maybe a man, then people try to skip it, that I don't want to be a part of it, or maybe they are
yeah.
with their in-laws or something else. So they
Mm,
don't want to involve themselves in someone else's conversation, or maybe there is no enough space, and they always have this fear of privacy, not in privacy sense, but in kind of a culture when you are with in-laws or someone else, that I don't want to
mm,
share a very close space with someone else.
mm, mm, mm. Yeah, I think this whole lift dynamics is a very interesting topic in itself. Uh, uh, I think a lot of these kind of things happen, and curiously, it is very different for an office lift as compared to a residential lift, because somehow it seems that once you are in that office environment, and because in a lift you meet people from other floors or from other offices, people seem to be comparatively more comfortable crowding into a lift when they are in an office lift. But in a residential lift, somehow there is this feeling that, you know, like you're saying, Imran, that depending on who is there in the lift, I might not want to uh, uh, move into that lift.
But even in commercial, I felt the
Ah,
nuisance of harassing women. Like,
yes, yes.
I feel that situation very vulnerable sometimes when there are so many people and they have to take that lift. And actually, by their face, you can see that they are not happy
Hmm,
taking that in a particular condition.
hmm,
But even in a residential area, at least in my neighborhood, where people they were not used to all these multi-story structures, and suddenly in Juapura there is a flux of all these multi-story buildings, and
hmm,
people they are transferring from row houses to, and somehow I felt like people they are not ready to pay the maintenance. So in afternoon, 12 to 5, elevators are closed,
hmm.
and I have seen people who are elderly, they don't have any option to go down.
Right. That's terrible. Yeah.
Even in people who can afford it, they have this private staircase. One of my friend has private staircases. You just open your door and you have a elevator next to it. And somehow they started switching one elevator like on and off. Like you can only use one
Hmm,
elevator just to save money, your maintenance bill. So even having a private one, they are not using as a private one. Elevator is always shut down.
hmm. There was this one question from Sharvi who was asking about privacy, that technology has made our lives devoid of privacy to a great extent. And in such a case, how do you think that houses can meet the privacy requirement? And do we need to question the basic definition of privacy in homes today? Yeah, I think privacy is I mean, it's a huge sort of uh, issue or a complicated thing in itself in terms of privacy from whom, privacy for what. Is it visual privacy? Is it privacy from listening in to each other? And definitely, yes, technology in that sense has made it. The current technology has made. In a curious way, yes, I agree that technology has completely changed notions of privacy, both when it comes to intentional sort of uh, lack of privacy and unintentional, in the sense that on one hand, we all hear about uh, uh, websites and other uh, organizations, in some cases even government tapping on into your mobile phones, and in that sense not having any privacy, uh, but also intentionally, in the sense that, I mean, if I look at all the Insta stories, or if I look at how people put up their private lives on display, there is definitely a changing notion of what can be uh, 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 made open to the world and what cannot. Uh, what, however, is not discussed enough is that how much of it is voluntary and intentional, and how much of it is not under your control. So I think when we are discussing notions of privacy, I think again, like Vipasha was saying, that how do we deal with the desire for privacy vis-a-vis the desire for sharing or uh, 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 interaction with each other. And the way I look at it, it's all a question about control. How much are you in control of your own particular needs? Because like I think many of you were pointing out, I think Indu was also pointing out in the chat, that if I take the lift, for example, a lot of people don't want to engage in a conversation while they are going to office or while they are going in a lift. And there is nothing wrong in that. So to say that no, you should talk to people when you get outside your house is equally problematic. To me, the only difference is that the lift in that sense is not giving you the control over whether you can or cannot talk, whereas the staircase, I'm not advocating for staircase in 10-story buildings. I think it's terrible to walk up and down, but I'm just saying as an architectural device. So there I wonder that, so when it comes to something like lift, I think people working in the technology of a lift are primarily engineers. They are asking the question from an engineering perspective, right? How to make the lift more safe, how to make the lift more fast, how to make the lift more efficient in terms of electrical consumption, how to make the lift more durable, how to make it cheap, etc., etc. These are technological, engineering, and business related questions to the lift. I don't know whether lift companies are hiring designers or architects not to decide the surface finish, but asking social questions of the lift design. Eventually, it's a transportation device which is taking you from the ground to upper floors. And if I ask a design question of the lift, that how should the lift be designed from a sociological perspective, I don't think that architects are even engaging in that question. We have all sort of given up and said that, okay, this is how the lift can be. Uh, yeah, and I think that's a pity. Yeah. Yes, I think Sanjana is saying that one can usually hear the neighbor's front door opening or closing, and that makes you aware whether they are going to the lift or not. I think there's so much that, depending on what your neighborly relations are, you might decide how to go about it. I think the worst case scenario, which I feel happens at least to introverts in lift, is that you walk into a lift all alone, uh, say on your 10th floor, and you're going down, and the lift stops on the ninth floor, and like six people get in, and then you are like, completely trapped, right? You have no option but to live with that. That's like, I know of people who are like mortified, who would be mortified just by thinking of that occurrence. It's a very fascinating uh, thing, which is, I know we are overshooting the time a little bit, but there, for example, if I look at escalators, uh, they are a very interesting concept, escalators as well as travelators, because it's interestingly in, I mean, if depending on how many lifts you put up, but actually if you're living in a situation where there are lesser lifts, actually the capacity of an escalator is more than that of a lift, because it is continuously moving, right? So every second two people can get on it, but depending on how many floors the lift is servicing, even though at a time six people get in it, but then the next six people have to wait for 5 minutes to get in. So purely in terms of capacity, an elevator works better. Uh, and it also takes care of this problem of claustrophobia or force to interact with other people. Although you could still look at someone in an escalator 4 steps away, uh, but of course, if you think of it in a high-rise building, it is going to take up a lot of space. And at least right now, in terms of capital expenditure, maybe an escalator for a 10 or a 14-story building will be much more expensive than putting a lift for sure. Uh, but I don't think we even think of this kind of thing. No, what if a 10-story housing project had escalators instead of lifts? You are solving the problem of not having to climb up, not having to do physical labor, uh, but at the same time you are giving the options of, and imagine, just like they do in malls, if the escalator is one below the other, then on every floor I'll have to walk around the, the corridor or whatever space in order to get back on the escalator. I suppose it would be much slower. So in case of emergencies, maybe it might be problematic. For accessibility, wheelchair, stretcher, it might be problematic. But uh, it might be fascinating to throw open this lift question